In our second section, we will begin developing our first project, a space shooter game. In this game, we will learn all about the basic fundamentals, such as UI pages, player movement, enemy collisions, and score tracking. We will also implement character selection, each with a signature attack. In this section, we're going to set up everything we need for our space shooter game. We're going to start off downloading the asset packs being used at these links here. We're then going to go ahead and create all the new folders for the game's art and components. Then we're going to make sure to add a main node that will be the starting scene for our game. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. This here is the first asset pack we're going to use. This is going to have everything in the game for the spaceships, the different asteroids, and the different laser sprites. It's going to be called Space Shooter Redux, and you can locate it at kenny.nl/assets/space-shooter-redux. So once you navigate here, simply scroll on down to the download button, select it, and then you're going to go ahead and download the zip. Now once you have that zip, make sure to extract all from it. The next asset pack we're going to be using is going to be for our UI. It's going to have a bunch of different UI in here for different colors like blue, yellow, red, green, and gray. It's going to be called UI Pack. You can locate this asset pack at kenny.nl/assets/UI Pack. And you're going to do the same thing. Once you navigate here, simply scroll on down to the download button, select it, and then you will have that zip. Now again, make sure to extract all from the zip. Once you've downloaded both asset packs and extracted both, we should be set. Alright, once you've downloaded your asset pack and extracted everything from it, we can go ahead and get started in our new Godot project. Now I created a new project and named it Space Shooter Game. Once you're here, you're going to start off in that 3D view, but because this is a 2D game, let's simply select the 2D view right over here. Alright, now one thing you can notice is that the current set screen right here is built for more of a desktop style game. Now we are going to be creating more of a mobile style game, so we need to adjust the screen size. Now that's pretty easy. All we have to do is simply go to our project settings. Then we just have to look for window, which you can simply find by typing in W. It's going to be under display right over here. So go ahead and select that. Perfect. Now we just can adjust the actual width and height of the screen. So let's start off with the width. A good one for mobile devices is 720 for width. And then for height, 1280. Hit enter, and there we go. Now let's scroll on down a bit. There's one more setting we can do that will help us in the long run. It's going to be under our stretch, and it's going to be mode. Now our current mode for stretch is set to disabled, so it will not adjust the screen depending on how much the screen stretches it out. But we don't want that. We want it to adjust to any screen size. So a good thing you can do is simply select that drop down and go to viewport. So now it'll go ahead and stretch to any screen size. It'll have somewhat of a black background around it, but that's okay. For the most part, it will fit in any screen. So let's go to close now. Let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is create our main scene. So let's go to 2D scene. Let's rename this as main, all lowercase. Hit enter. As you can see, it's currently not saved. So let's save that. Now it's asking where we want to save it. Now we don't currently have a nice folder for this, and it's best to have a folder for each thing we're going to be saving in the game. So before we save this, let's cancel. Let's create those folders. All right. I'm also going to readjust the screen here so we can see that full screen as well. So to create those folders, we're going to right click on our rest folder here at the lower left, create new folder. Let's call it scenes. Hit OK, and there we go. So now what we can do is save again, Control S, save inside that scenes folder. Hit save, and there it is. It's right in there. Perfect. So one other thing I like to do also is I like to set the folders to specific colors. It just makes things a little easier to read and more organized. So I'm going to set this one's color to a purple. Let's also create the other folders as well. Let's right click, create new folder. Let's call this one art. Let's change the color and set it to red. Now that asset pack that you downloaded, you want to go ahead and drag and drop the extract one into here, okay? Make sure to do that. Simply open up the File Explorer and just drag and drop it right into there, all right? And we should be set there. Let's go ahead and create the other folders real quick. Folder. Let's call this one components. This is going to save all the different components we're going to create throughout the game, such as the lasers, asteroids, enemy ships, and even maybe the player. Let's give it a color. I'm going to right click, set color to yellow. All right, one more left. Let's right click, create new folder. Let's call this one scripts. This is going to save, of course, all the different scripts we're going to create for our game. Let's also give it a color, set it to something like green. And there we go. Let's save that real quick. All right, so now all we got to do is make sure that things look good when we hit play on the game. And we can simply do that simply by going to the Start Current Scene right over here. Select that. It's going to load up. And as you can tell, it perfectly fits in the screen. Now, what if the window isn't this big? What if we go ahead and minimize it just a bit? As you can see, it still fits there. What if we stretch it out a bit? It still fits, perfect. And of course, if we go up and down as well, it's still going to fit, all right? Now, this is one way you can do the scaling. Of course, there's other ways, but for now, at a beginner level, this I think is the best way to do it. Let's close it up real quick. Let's go ahead, close up the output, back up a bit, save what you got, and there we go. We're looking good so far. In this section, we're going to create a global script. We're going to start off discussing what a global script is. Then we're going to add one into our current game. From there, we're going to add some global variables within this script. Then, last but not least, we're going to add an important global game function for resetting all the current values. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. This here is an example of how the global script is going to work in our game. Now this box in the center is going to resemble the current main scene we have. Now in that scene, we're going to be adding things such as the UI, the player, and also the enemy nodes. Now if we want to track certain variables without communicating all over the place within each script, a better way to do it is simply house those variables within the global script, such as maybe the current points, the player health, or also the game state of whether the game is currently on or off. So we can directly communicate with that outside of each script, just like this. Now, one thing to note though that gets confused a lot with global scripts is that when we reset variables within the current game, such as resetting it when a game over happens, it's only going to reset those variables within the current main scene. So what's going to happen though is it's not going to reset those variables within the global script, so we also have to create a function to specifically do that. Godot makes it very easy though. All right, let's go ahead and get started creating that global script. Now to do that, we simply have to go all the way up to Project, Project Settings, select the Globals tab on the top, and there we go. So now let's go ahead and give this a name. Now usually you don't want too many global scripts. Specifically for this game, we only have one, so I'm going to call it Global. Go ahead, add that in. Let's select the correct location with this button here, and make sure we're saving it in that specific scripts folder. Hit Open, Create, and there we go. There's our global script. Now let's go ahead and open it up with the folder button right here, and now we can see what's in it. All right, so what we're going to do though, starting off, is add all those global variables. First one is going to be called variable game underscore over. And we're simply going to equal that to false starting off. Underneath it, we're going to create another one called game underscore on. And again, we're simply going to equal that to false. Next up, we're going to create variable score and equal our default starting value to 0. Underneath there, we're going to create another variable. We're going to call this chosen underscore ship. And we're always going to start off the default selected chosen ship equal to 1. Once we want to switch them, we'll simply equal this to 2 or 3. Now we're going to add one more variable on the bottom here called mute. And this is simply going to keep track of whether or not the player wants to hear the sound effects. Now I like to add this because those sound effects or background music can get kind of annoying over time. So this is just a nice little thing to add for your player. Alright, as mentioned earlier though, we're also going to create a function to reset these values when we want to restart the game. So let's do function reset underscore values, give it a parentheses set, colon, and then backspace within it. And what we can do now is simply just copy all of our current variables and paste them in. Then we just need to format them correctly. We can get rid of the var, so go ahead, backspace, and give it a tab. And do that for each one to get rid of all those errors. Again, we need to run this whenever we want to restart the game, because if we currently just restart the current scene, it will only reset all the current values within the scripts within the game, not the global ones. So we have to remember to run this whenever we restart the game. Now one more function we're going to add in here. This is just a little helpful to help mute the game if the player wants to. We're going to use a pre-built function called underscore process. Now the process function is just going to continuously run whenever the game is on. This delta value within it helps calculate things with the current frame rate of the game. Now we don't need to worry about that for now. We'll get into that down the road. But to go ahead now and reset and turn it on and off the sound for the game, we need to first tell whether or not mute is equal to false or true. So we're going to say if mute equals true. If that's the case, then we're going to turn off the sound. Now to do that, there's a simple way we can do it within Godot by doing a capital A, audio. And we're going to do audio server. Make sure you spell things correctly. Audio server dot, and we're going to do set underscore bus underscore volume underscore dB, this one right here. So go ahead, add that in there. Within it, set a parentheses. We're going to go ahead again, do audio server dot get underscore bus underscore index, and within there we're simply going to set master, which is going to be connecting to the basically sound of the game, and to set it to not be listenable anymore, just do -80. All right, now that might be a little confusing, but this specific code will simply go ahead and just turn off all sound within your game. Now if you want to do the opposite and turn it back on, what we can do is simply go ahead, do an else, and then just copy that same code we have right here, paste it in underneath, and instead of -80, simply just set that to 0, which will reset it. All right. Again, this is a little complicated code for now as a beginner, but all you really need to know is that it basically will turn on and off the sound. All right, let's save what we got in here, Control S. Let's go back to our 2D view, and there we go, we're looking good. In this section, we're going to go ahead and create the background for our game. We're going to start off and discuss what kind of background we want to create for our game. Then we're going to go ahead and add the correct node to create the visuals for the background. We're then going to go ahead and create a simple script to add the scrolling background ability. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. The best way we can go about creating a background for our game is simply adding a default image and then having a looping effect to make it look like it's moving forward. Now to do that in Godot, what we're going to do is start off with a base image of the background that will fit the entire screen. Then we're going to go ahead and duplicate that image and put it right above the starting one. From there, we're going to go ahead and create an animation and set it to loop by moving the entire two images downward. Once it gets to the bottom, it will go ahead and reset that image, giving it the looping effect. Now we're also going to need a simple script that starts playing the animation on start and of course pauses it when necessary. Alright, let's get started creating that background. So one thing to note, make sure you added both the asset folders inside your art folder, because we are going to start using some of those assets. Now to start this off, let's give it a main node for the background. Let's right click on our main node, add child node, type in node and select node 2D. Hit create. Let's rename this BG for background. Now inside of background, we're going to add a couple things, starting off with that base image that fills the entire screen. Let's go ahead, right click, add child node, and we're going to use another node 2D, and we're simply going to call this space 1. Now, space 1, we need to add the actual sprite in it. To do it, there's a simple way we can right click, add child node, and what we could do is add a sprite 2D. Now this isn't my favorite way to do it, but this is probably the easiest way. We might not stick with this way, but I just want to show you how to do it in the first place. So let's locate the space image. It's going to be inside of our space shooter game. Find backgrounds, and then you can select whichever background. I'm going to use the dark purple background. Drag and drop it into here. Perfect. And as you can see, now we have our image. And of course, we can move it around with our move tool, place it somewhere like over here, and then go ahead and stretch it out. But the problem with doing this is it's going to go ahead and stretch the image. And as you can see, it doesn't look like it should. It's a little bit too stretched downward and maybe a little less to the left, so the stars aren't really matching very well. So there's actually a better way we can go about this. What we could do is remove the current sprite 2D, select it, hit the delete key, and instead of adding a sprite 2D, we could go ahead, right click, add child node, and add a tile map layer. It's going to be this one right here. Go ahead, create that. Then we can go ahead on the inspector towards the right, set the tile set empty to new tile set. You're going to see some new tabs open up here, such as tile set and tile map. We currently do not have a tile set yet, so we need to go ahead and select tile set. Now we can go ahead and drag and drop in our image that we want. So I'm going to take that dark purple.png we had earlier and drag and drop it right here. Now it's going to ask you if it wants to basically tile cut it for you, and we don't want that. Go ahead and select no. Now what we need to do though is make this one image. As you can see, it's kind of cut into a bunch of different boxes, and that is because in the setup, if you scroll down, it's currently set to 16x and 16y. But if you highlight over that image over here in the folders, you can see that it's 256 by 256. So we need to set it to those numbers. So let's go ahead, set that for x, 256, and then 256 for y. Perfect. Now it's going to be one whole image. But if we go ahead and go to tile map now, we select that image. Make sure you are highlighting it. Might have to re-click into it. Or actually go back to tile set. We never actually initiate it as a tile. All you got to do is just select it and then highlight it. Then go back to tile map, select it again. And now if you start placing it though, it's not exactly going to place it in the correct positioning. Now the reason it's doing this is because it's still placing it in that 16 by 16. We can change that though if we go over to the tile set and then change it from tile size over here. So let me remove what we currently have on the screen first. I'm going to use the eraser tool. You can use the box tool to be a little faster, just like that. I'm going to turn off the eraser tool. I'm going to keep the box tool on though, but I am going to now change these to 256 to match up what we currently have in the tile set. So let's go ahead, add that there as well, and it should be positioned a little better now. So now if we place a block here, here, and here, looks like it sets a lot better. I'm going to go ahead now and fill out the entire screen. Perfect. As you can see though, it's a little bit too much to the right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to take our space 1 and just move it on over to the left a bit, just so it's kind of centered, just like that. You can zoom in a bit if you want to make sure that it is at the bottom. It should be with the 256. Same thing at the top. You can go ahead, zoom in a bit, and just make sure it's going up to the line, which it is. Perfect. So now we need to go ahead and duplicate this and put the duplication right above it. So let's go ahead, select space 1. I'm going to Control D to duplicate. You can also right click and then scroll down to where duplicate is. But now we want to do is bring this second one right above it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to zoom out just a bit, take that green arrow, hold down the control key, and just move it up to where it matches up. Now we just want to make sure it is perfectly on the line. So what I'm going to do is zoom in a bit, and then still hold down the control key, move it down until we're right on the line, because we got to make sure that it is perfect. And there we go. Let's scroll back out, and we should be looking good there. All right, so now what we need to do is give it the animation to give it that looping effect. Now that is really easy. All we have to do is right click on our background node, add child node, look for animation player. It's going to look just like this. Add that in there, and there we go. All right, let's go ahead and create that simple animation where we scroll this thing down in a looping effect. I'm going to go to pointer. I'm going to go to animation, new, and I'm simply going to call this loop. And all we're going to do is we are going to go ahead now and select space 2 and 1. We can start with the space 1 to make things simple. And all we're going to do is go to our move tool. Now before we move it down though, we need to save that starting position. And how we can do that is simply go to the transform. And you're going to see these keys now. And these keys are going to mark a new spot in our set animation. So let's go ahead and mark that animation right here. Hit create. And as you can see, that is going to be the new starting animation. Now, of course, we need to go downward. So I'm going to move our current animation set all the way to 1 second right over here. And then I'm simply going to move this one down all the way towards that line there. I'm going to zoom in a bit just to make sure I'm on the exact line. There we go. Looks like that's perfect. Now I'm going to save that as well. Looks good. Now we saved that one. Now we need to do the other one. So let's go ahead back to 0. Let's select our space 2. I'm going to save that starting position. Hit create. Then go ahead, move it all the way down here. Then simply move this down. It should lock into place. Just go ahead, double check it has the right positioning for each one. Yep, looks good there. Then all we have to do is save that with the key. Now, if we go ahead and hit play, you're going to see it's going to move down. But it doesn't have that looping effect yet. To add that looping effect, we can simply select this little arrows over here to add the animation looping. And if we go ahead now and play that animation, it'll go ahead and loop, which is exactly what we want. Now I think this is a little fast. If you want to adjust basically the speed to more than 1 second, we can change that from over here. Let's say we want it to be 2 seconds. So then you can go ahead and just highlight both of these here and move them on over to the 2 second. Make sure you have your line there so you can match it up on there. So go ahead, highlight each one and move it directly on top of it. And there we go. So now if we go ahead, hit play, it'll be a little slower. And again, you can adjust this to whatever one you want, but I think 2 second looks pretty good. All right. Now one more thing we could add real quick before we create that script is give the game some borders. Now these aren't necessarily necessary for the game because our mouse isn't really going to go past, but it does help the game look a little more natural. So let's add those borders real quick. Super easy. Let's right click on background, add child node, create a static body 2D. Now this is going to add the ability to make collisions. So if we have something like a player or maybe certain enemies, they won't be able to pass through the things we put in here. So let's go ahead, right click on that static body 2D. We need to give it a specific shape. And we can do that by adding something called a collision shape 2D. So add that collision shape 2D in there. Then we just need to give it a shape, which you can do on the inspector. Let's give it just some rectangles. We'll start off with one here. It's going to be a little small, but all we want to do is just go ahead and stretch this out to the size of the screen. So I'm going to take that, move it down. Make sure you have the middle dot or it's going to stretch each corner. There we go. Again, let's go ahead, move that down. Make sure you got the middle one. There we go. It's okay if it goes a little farther, that's fine. Then what we can do is select that, Control D, and just move it on over to the other side. And just kind of match it up. Make sure the middle's on that line, just like that. All right. So now we need to go ahead and create the one for the top and bottom, which we can do by simply going ahead, duplicating. But one thing that you'll notice is if you go ahead now and try to change the shape, it's going to change the shape of all of them, which we don't want to do. We want to keep those other two. So if I Control Z, and what we can do to make that not happen is simply go over to that shape we have, rectangle, right click on it, and simply select Make Unique. So now this will make it a new shape. So we go ahead and change this now. As you can see, it won't change the other ones, which is what we want. So let's go ahead and select it, Control D. Let's bring this on down to the lower one here. And we should be set. There we go. And those are going to be our game borders. So our player will not be able to go through these. Now you might be worried about those enemies bumping into these. Our enemies will be set up a little differently so they won't be affected by these borders. Let's go ahead though, save what we got. We can close up the animation by selecting this here. We can also close up some of the art as well. And we're looking good. Now let's go ahead and create that simple script. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the main node of our background. So we can close up the static body and select the main background node. Add a script with this little button here. We can keep the name as BG, but we need to select the correct location, which is going to be that scripts folder. So let's locate that, open it, and create. All right, so this is going to be a super simple script. All we want to do in here is to start the scrolling effect, and then of course stop it when the game is no longer playing. All right, to do that, what we'll do is start off with a function called _ready. Now this will go ahead and initiate anything on start of the game. So it's not going to continuously run after the game has started, just one time at the beginning when you turn on the game. But what we want to do then is simply start that animation. So we can take our animation player, drag and drop it in, do a dot play, and then within it just play the animation you want, which is looping. Now this reset one is kind of like its default one. All right. Every single time you make a new animation or a new animation player, it's going to have one reset in there, which is kind of like the default that is automatically there. Usually you don't want to use the reset one. You always want to use any created one. So let's add that there. Perfect. So now when we start the game, it'll start that animation. And we can test that out simply by saving what we have so far. We can go ahead now and start current scene, and you're going to see that animation playing. And there you go. Let's go ahead and close out of there. Now we just need to add the pausing effect. So let's go ahead, go in here. Let's create another function. Let's do function _ process. Now within here, all we want to do is say if global dot game over equals true. If that is the case, then we're going to go ahead, take our animation player, drag and drop it in there, do a dot play, and go ahead and set the reset. Or if you don't want to do that, what we could do instead is simply do a dot pause, which will pause any current animation playing. All right, so let's save that real quick. Let's go ahead and go to our global script because we know that the game over doesn't equal true currently. So let's change that to true starting off and just test to make sure it pauses the animation. So now back to 2D view, start current scene. Let's double check it actually pauses it, which there you go. It's doing it. Awesome. Let's close out of there. Let's remember to go back to script and let's change that back to what it was to false, just so we don't mess up anything else in the future. Let's go back to 2D view. Let's close the output. Let's go ahead, close that there, zoom in a bit, and save what you got.